Alright, so here is FRQ 2018 number 3. This one is going to involve the contents or topics of one-dimensional arrays and strings. Take a second or two now to kind of read through the problem. If you are seeing this for the first time, maybe pause the video and see if you can figure out what part A is trying to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So again, what we're doing is we're trying to complete one of the parts of the word pair list class. Essentially, given an array of strings, can reproduce all the possible pairs from that array. So for example, right, 1 and 2, that's going to be a pair. 1 and 3, that's another pair. And finally, 2 and 3. So we're producing those pairs. Now, in order to produce or in order to encapsulate those in a pair, we're also given a class here. The word pair class, right, encapsulates 2 strings, the first string and the second string. Very convenient, so we're going to use the has a relationship. So the word pair list is going to be using the word pair. So it has a word pair object in it. So let's go ahead and get started here. So again, given a one-dimensional array, how do you kind of figure out all the possible pairs? That is a pretty typical nested for loop. And so we can get that started. But the first thing we want to do, of course, whenever you are dealing with a constructor, right, that should automatically means to handle any instantiations. Instantiations for instance variables. So you want to make sure you do that anytime you're dealing with a constructor. So we're taking a look at the word pair list. The instance variable is the array list all pairs, right? So you don't want to be accidentally using all pairs without actually having an object to work with. So the first thing we're going to do, so I'm going to skip the header part of the constructor header, blah blah blah, and let's get into the body. So all pairs, that's the instance variable. We're actually going to instantiate the array list for that. New array list of word pairs. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the array of strings, and we are going to input those values into it by going through them in pairs. So this is a typical nested for loop. While int I is equal to 0, I is less than words dot length. That's my parameter minus 1, I plus plus. So what that's going to do is, given an array, right, it's going to go through them one by one. And so it's going to stop right here because I did that minus 1 on the length. And the reason for that is because the inner for loop, so down here signifies my outer for loop. My inner for loop is going to start one ahead, and then keep going, stopping at the very last one. Okay, so we're gonna do for int j is equal to I plus 1. J is less than words dot length and j plus plus. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is each time we visit one, right? So essentially, if we think about it, that first outer loop is gonna say, so we're gonna track it with red here. So currently, if I is here, then it's going to move j over each time. And so if we're tracking it, I, j, here are all the pairs that we're going to make up. I is going to stay at 0, and then j is going to be 1. J is going to increment by 1, I stays at 0. J increments, I stays the same, j increments, I stays the same, etc., etc. And so here are all the word pair lists. So it's to go to index 0 and 1, index 0 and 2, index 0 and 3, index 0 and 4. And so essentially that's making up all of these pairs. 0 and 1, 0 and 2, 0 and 3, 0 and 4, 0 and 5, etc., etc. However many we have in there. Okay, so now every single time we have the two indices pointing at two different words, we're going to create the pair object. If we go back to that, right, we know that there's a constructor right here. You should be able to construct a word pair. So that takes in the first string followed by the second string. So we're going to go, let's add. So the data structure is all pairs. And then the method we want to use is add. And then here, instead of creating, an intermediate variable, you could make an intermediate variable. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. We can just skip all that work and just say new word pair. Words at I, words at j. If you wanted to use an intermediate variable, what you could do is create one here, word pair, temp is equal to new word pair. Give it the two parameters, words at I, words at j. And then finally, instead of putting this right here, you would then use the variable temp. So that is part A. So again, part A says, can you visit all pairs within a one-dimensional array? Can you then use a class, create a whole bunch of objects, and add them to an array list? So now we're working with an array list, one-dimensional array, and strings. Alright, let's talk about part B. Let's create a new sketch here. Create this card. Alright, part B, what we want to do is figure out, so now we have an all pairs array list. It's pre-populated with a whole bunch of word pairs. And what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through that array list. And we're going to look at all the instances where the first word is equal to the second word. The examples that they give you here, right? So given an original array of words, the red fox, the red, if you created all of the pairs here, you will find that because we don't have a unique set of words, we're going to have instances, or we have this case, where the first word is equal to the second word. So really all we want to do is traverse the the array list, and then have a counter that says, hey, is your first equal to your second? What we want to be careful of, though, is how are we going to access those instance variables, and how are we going to compare them? Here, we know that we're visiting the array list and we're getting a word pair each time, and then within word pair, those instance variables are private. However, what they do give us are two getter methods. And I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and complete this method. Public int num matches. Alright, so we know we're counting the number of matches, so we're gonna int count is equal to 0. We're gonna traverse the array list. We can use an enhanced for loop, which is very useful when we are reading elements, or you can use your traditional for loop, either way. So this is saying for each word pair in the array list, all pairs do something, right? So for each word pair within all pairs, do something. And so all we're going to do is check to see that the first is equal to the second. So if w dot get first, so that's going to return a string. We're going to compare whatever is returned by that string using the equals method for strings. And we're going to pass in the second word, get second. If that is true, we're going to increment our count, because this says, hey, the first word is equal to the second word. So we found one. We found a word pair where that is true. So then finally, once we make it out of this loop, we know that we have tried to look for all of the possible matches, and we can just simply return the count. Return count. And so there we go. So for this one, let's see what's being tested. One thing is, can you traverse an array list? So that's being tested for. And then 2, do you know how to use getters when necessary? And then 3, are you recognizing that you're comparing strings, right? Anytime you're comparing objects, you should be trying to use methods. Do not use the equals operator, which is mostly, of course, we want to use that when we're working with numerical entities, not objects. I think that's about it.